Who wants to go first? How was yesterday? I'm biased.
Very good. Very,
Yeah,
very
let's
good.
have a first timer talk. Teresa, what did you think of yesterday?
I was a second timer, actually. I did go before.
Sorry?
But
Oh, yes, of course, you are a two-timer, right?
A second timer. I enjoyed this one more, actually.
Why?
I thought, for me personally, I found it friendlier. I like the topics, and I liked the reception at the end of the day. Very nice. It's a lovely day.
Oh, you mean Philip?
I mean the reception when we went upstairs.
The reception.
It was a beautiful reception. Yeah. All in all.
People often, I think, Luke, you also were inebriated last night, so you also enjoyed the reception, yes?
Yes.
Good.
I even got Philip as far as that he invited me in LinkedIn instead of the other way around.
I saw you guys exchanging information.
Yeah.
So our keynote was Philip Lowe, and Michelle, I don't think you came. No, 2015 is before we met, so you wouldn't have been there. I'm trying to see if anyone. Marin, do you remember Philip Lowe? He's the fellow who showed up in bright burgundy shoes. He was my fourth keynote. It was in San Diego. He's the brain neuroscientist.
What did he talk about?
He invented the eye brain.
Oh, I do remember that. The shoes were amazing.
The shoes were amazing. He was very disappointing. He wore regular black shoes yesterday. I was like, what's with the shoes? He was to speak at 5 o'clock. He magically appeared at 4:57.
He said he had 12 whiskeys the night before.
This doesn't surprise
Jeez.
me, but that's not why. I know why. It's a personal matter with his family and such. I talk him up as this, really smart guy, and I've known him, and he even like what I recalled as his genius was a mere specter of what he presented yesterday. He said, how long do I have? I said, well, an hour. He says, I have 360 slides. I thought he was joking, wasn't joking. And he went through them all because it was like, as he was talking, he was showing another image of another brain wave, another this sleep study. And this is what, the brain of a bird looks like and how it's different than another mammal. It was astonishing. I had to interrupt because, I have a microphone a few times, and Lucas, the only other one who had the courage.
Understood what he was talking about, yeah.
I interrupted him the first time because
you were starstruck with him. I
was a little.
You were a little bit in awe.
But beyond that.
No, beyond that, he still has to prove his clinical trials before he can make his claims. Detecting all these diseases. And actually, for Parkinson, there was this latest invention that you could test it on some molecules. That was because a woman who could smell Parkinson, and the university came with a solution to have just a chemical test. And that had a specificity about 90% or something. It was really good. So there are alternative things to detect Parkinson also.
He is very, very protective of his image, of access to him, of his content.
Yes.
I do not know if I will be allowed to release his video.
One of the things I was most impressed with is that my company's video, I had to do the voiceover. He got freaking Morgan Freeman.
He didn't get freaking Morgan Freeman. That's not how it works. It was a television show featuring what he had worked on, and Morgan was the voice. But yeah, if you weren't speaking so fast, I would have said, "Did you get to meet Morgan?" But it was.
But to get Elon Musk and Hawking wearing his brain device.
This is he casually shows a picture of him shaking President Obama's hand, shaking President Biden's hand. He's, counseled NASA, and on it goes. He's astonishing. So his invention, if you think about ALS people who are locked in, they have no basic ability to move any muscle, but they still think. And speaking at a really, mother-in-law level, because that's really all I can retain, is you can think left or right. And the eye brain can detect if you're thinking left or right. And he puts together a tree of yes, no, and then spell the word. And your
That's
little
not really that special. You know what's special about his invention? Because he's a mathematician. He knows his math, and he had all these brain waves decomposed in other ways, and his math is so good that he can detect all these other brains in regular EEG, and that's his specialty.
You know what?
Because all the like, if I would do it, I would need 32 channels or something like that, and it would work. But he can do it with two channels in his forehead.
We
Sorry.
are talking about you right now. If there is any chance you can jump on this call, period. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah. I told him that if I want to get rich of medical devices, it won't happen. But if you can have the rights on his life story, I mean, you're in.
But on a more serious note, Teresa was saying this was a kinder event. Was she saying that, Joe, you were kinder than?
Maybe the people I was introduced to, the people I was.
Okay, good. I was just surprised.
I really liked.
I would miss the show. I would like to see. You know, it's.
What you're not factoring in is it's not me. It's the presence or absence of you.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought the.
So by
Nice.
definition, you will never experience the kind Joe Hage experience. You are a target for these things. But there was no one even remotely like at the event, so there was no need for me to be acerbic.
Interesting. You know, my wife says the same thing when she snaps back and she says, this is the product that you created.
Shall I give you my takeaways and then shut up?
No, you can give away your takeaways and not shut up.
Okay. Well, first of all, I like talking to Michelle Sullivan of Boston Scientific on net zero, because what she really made clear is how easy some steps are to reduce CO2 footprint, and that you just have to start. So
yeah,
it was really neat, an eye opener. I'm not into that pay grade to contract distributors, but I thought the talk of Erin White was so to the point. It was great.
That was the
slide
best
she
talk
presented.
I've ever heard on medical device distribution versus direct sales ever.
It was not meant for me, but it was a great talk.
She was fantastic.
And then because Michelle Lott was not there, we had Leslie Hammermuller to scare the shit out of everybody concerning the MDR, and she did a great job. And
I curled up in a ball at that point.
And I also like the talk of Kate Goes Tech, Kate Levchuk, because I just looked at her because she's so beautiful, and I just discarded all of her talk because it was rubbish.
I had a speaker drop out, and Philip's girlfriend stepped in for the talk up to him. And hi, Lily. Say hi to everybody, Lily.
Hey, Michelle, what breed is it?
She's half pug, half Yorkie, but she looks and acts like a pug.
So she's a Porky?
Porky, yes, exactly. That's what everybody's calling her. So.
Oh, and so Kate's topic was, what does the metaverse have to do with all of this? And
the answer was nothing.
if she had more, let's give her the benefit of the doubt. If she had more time, say another half hour or an hour, she may have gotten there. But her lead up to the topic was interesting to me, but not relevant to the topic. She was born in Ukraine. She's lived in many places all over the world. She talked about how dictatorships suppress innovation, and there were so many inventions out of Asia and the Eastern Bloc that either don't come to great fruition, or the collaboration with the West is cut short, which I find very interesting, especially given that she comes from Ukraine.
She's very beautiful. She has very interesting heel-raising devices.
She has what?
Well, they're sledges, so you can call them stilettos, but they were high.
Okay, Luke. Yes,
very
she was
high.
an attractive woman.
Yeah.
But we didn't get much by way of the answer to metaverse. What I summarized as, I had to wrap. I was like, so if I understand you, you're saying that because the internet and social are available, we can collaborate all over the world. And she said yes. And I said, thank you. That's Kate Levchuk. which didn't really satisfy the question, but you know. So to me, among the talks, Erin White, fantastic. Philip was phenomenal. I'm actually going to look at the agenda because my mind is fried from yesterday even.
Like with data is always, if they just show what they're doing, it's okay.
I thought, yeah, Nyquist was on. It was just a love fest. Where's Mike?
Actually,
there he is.
During our conference, I sent an email to Michelle because I was like, I'm sure you're already dealing with these people, but oh my gosh. And actually, Michelle and I are catching up after this call. So that was
Ed
really,
was like,
really
Mike, Ed wrote Michelle Lott and was like, you got to see this Nyquist shit. And she's like, yeah, I'm aware.
I'm on it. Yeah.
Well, he didn't know, like in one of our calls a few weeks ago, Ed didn't know I was using Nyquist at the time. And that's how I was able to get the information so fast. And there's only one of this, but so many of these and blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, come off mute.
Who from Nyquist went?
Lena, their
Okay.
VP of Business Development.
Mhm.
And she did a great job. There was some confusion because they thought Michelle Wu was going to come on. That was the plan.
We
So
were all
she
at
was-
RAP.
Yeah, we
she was
met.
home
We
by
met up
then,
with
but it
her.
was her talking time was 3 in the morning.
So
And
what are you saying? She could have easily done it?
no, Lena did great, but I was unaware that was the plan. So when Michelle Wu didn't respond to a series of texts and slacks to wake up, I moved it back a half hour, and then I moved it to after lunch. And I thought, well, maybe Mike will join, but he wasn't up yet either because that would have been 7 a.m. his time. And then Lena informed me that she's as well versed in the system as either of them, and I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that because she does marketing. Just like I do marketing for Michelle, but go ahead and ask me a guidance question. Good luck. But she was great. And Jeff McBride, Mike was there, of course. And so after she went over the basics, I said, let's do something other than heart failure. Who's working on any submission right now? And surprisingly, nobody raised their hand. And so I went over to Jeff. I says, I know you're working on 4. He says, can we look at sleep apnea? So she types in sleep apnea and she says, which one do you want? Obstructive or I forget the other one. And he's like, I don't know. Look up both. And he was gobsmacked again. He was like, we are going to be having a conversation right after this meeting.
Yeah.
It really is. When you see the video, I was falling over myself, gushing about, now tell them about this. Oh, what about that? Push that button.
Yeah.
Truly,
One
anyone
of my
in
colleagues,
regulatory will use that system or use one of the also ran competitors because David, you're on the call. You when we talked weeks ago, I said, what's bigger, the idea that all of the systems are combined or the fact that they made mod easy? And you said mod.
Yeah.
one of my colleagues, by the way, Joe, did lean over to me and say, is Joe on commission? I hope so, the way he's talking this up.
I am, but I'm on commission. You can assume I'm on commission anytime I say, oh, you should talk to that person or that person. Like people throw me a check here and there, but this thing, and
Yeah,
I told Mike the other day, for a decade, I have this great big group. Oh, I must have great influence. I can make anything happen. I can introduce you to anybody and great deals. And you get me investors, I'll get you in. I'm like, okay. Because, you have to really understand something and it has to be a worthwhile value prop. These are not to be taken for granted. Introducing Mike is like, I told the audience what your ringtone is.
Great.
When he phones me, the ringtone is cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. It's that easy. It's the easiest money I've ever made. Now I just need to scale it so I never have to work again. That'd be sweet. Mike, you're awfully silent today.
I'm a big believer in the people that are actually using it, like David and Michelle and others, to talk about the benefit they're getting as opposed to hearing it from me. So that's why I'm quiet, Joe.
Okay, well, there we are. So yes, that section went very well. I experimented with what do you need, which of course we have on Premium, where people tell us what they need and everyone else answers. And I tried that in the live room, and I was very surprised, but people were rather shy about what they needed. Teresa, afterward, it was around ice cream, and she said, would you bring your event to Italy? And I said, I don't know, because, I don't really I'm not that established in Italy. I said, if you're willing to take on the financial risk, I'll go anywhere you want. And she said, oh, okay. And I said, so it sounds to me like you need these things in Italy. And she says, well, I do. And I said, where were you at 11:30 when I said, what do you need? She's like, well, I was a little, okay, well, that's not how it works if we want to get help. So, and then I got your boss, Martha, on this one. I said, what do you need? And do you remember what he said?
Yeah, it has to do about the recruitment, but the recruitment in terms of the PMCF specialists and people who work in the regulations and that kind of stuff. Because in our company, we have these two departments. We have
well, let me stop you for a moment.
Yeah.
They don't know what you do, so introduce yourself.
Sorry. So yeah, my name is Martha. I'm a senior research executive, and I work in a market research company. So my company, which is called Perry Pasco, is based in London. They have two departments. One is the primary market research, where we mainly work with medical device companies, some pharmaceuticals as well, but mainly medical device companies. But we have one more department, which I'm kind of specialized in this one. And we work with the PMCF, post-market clinical follow-up surveys. So the issue is that when we try to recruit people, usually people are coming from market research, so they have no idea about what's happening with the regulations, and they don't know about the safety and performance data, how to collect them, etc. So we try to find this kind of people. It's really specific. So and it's just coming to life now.
So I found that those who did participate, almost everyone, needed to expand their, get their message out to more people, whether it was, Erin said, we really need to hire someone to run, what was it, Germany, or
yeah,
I don't remember now. We had Giles from RMG. He does executive recruitment, and he was great, very knowledgeable. I was very impressed with him. He said that there are some 35,000 positions, I think, in the UK, and that the scarcity of labor is really where we are in the curve right now, and how demand for his services is somewhat out of control. Teresa, introduce yourself to the group.
Well, Teresa Percival, I work for Amira Health. I mainly work with medical buyers and distributors in the Middle East. This is for medical products, but I'm increasingly moving towards therapies. And part of my idea of the Italian event is working with some therapies, including physiotherapy in a medieval Italian village. That's where I'm at. But the talk I really appreciated yesterday was, of course, selling in the EMEA. And I agree with you about Erin White. It was a simply fantastic presentation.
That one I'll certainly be able to broadcast. I told her that I will be promoting that one pretty heavily, because I get asked those questions all the time, and now I have a really good answer to give people. She put together some 16 things that you need to do if you're going to distribute in Europe, and talk through them very cogently. And then, a dozen things that you do not do. Do not let your distributor this, do not. So these hard won lessons. She was a real gift. Longtime friend of the show, Stephen Carter, spoke on IP. He told us about 5 things that we need to look for. He's a 6-time 10Xer, 60X, if you will. And so a lot of you have met him in person and have a good idea of what he does. Jeff McBride, Mike, and Diarmid spoke about software as a medical device challenges. And among them is regulatory. They talked a good deal about regulatory matters, and that's why it dovetailed into what Nina spoke so easily. Basile couldn't make it. Of course, he was at RAPS. So he sent Dr. Leslie Hammermuller, who was delightful. And her topic was, what happens if you miss the MDR deadline? And the short answer is you're screwed. I mean, that's it. You know, there was one, actually, Michelle, there was one loophole she introduced that I hadn't heard before. I said, you know, like the Avengers and Thanos and it goes like this and half the population is gone and it's the EU really could go like that and half the devices are gone. It's just too hard to fathom. And she said, well, some people will continue to use devices off label. And I said, so I get it. Like you're not really allowed, but you know, you're a doctor and you have the thing and you can use it or not. I can't force you to not use the product that is out of
but Joe, I think you missed the intricacies about that. It's if you have a device on the market that's used on adults and children, and now the demands on your clinical evaluation on children is much harder these days, and you can still get along with your adults, then you only keep on, you have to certify it under the MDR for just adults, and then people keep on using them on children off label. But it's not that you don't have to recertify your device.
Let me paraphrase what I think you just said. If you find yourself in a situation with no certified alternatives, then you can continue to use it off label.
No. It's like you have a limited indication. Say you want to sell it to adults and for adults and children.
I get it.
You can't get the indication for children, but you still have to go through the full MDR process for adults. And then clinicians can choose to use it on pediatrics.
Well,
but you went through all of the things. You just didn't go through all of the things for every single population that's going to use your device.
Well, I mean, this is an example where there are multiple audiences and multiple applications. I'm thinking about a disease that I do not know that has a device that helps, you know, 1,000 people. And that's the only thing that it does, and it falls out of compliance. Sorry, 1,000 people, go ahead and die.
If it falls out of compliance and it does not meet the deadline, it has to go.
And so do the 1,000 patients. They also need to go.
Mm-hmm.
You can only sell it as a research device or something like that.
That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, would I, as a physician,
law doesn't make sense.
Hold on. Would I, as a physician, be making a moral or ethical choice?
You're not going to have a choice to make because the devices aren't going to be allowed to be imported into the EU period. So they're not going to be there for you to choose.
Fine, but I have one. I got one before May 2024.
There's a whole set of rules about the supply chain and how long things can remain in inventory. And people were already supposed to stop shipping devices to Europe that weren't in compliance with MDR. Pretty sure.
I'm thinking there has to be some device that doesn't have pardon me, there has to be a part of a device that doesn't have a consumable part that you can still use. I mean, if I have one, it's like a silly example. I have a COVID test. It's way expired. It's 6 years out of code. And in 2027, I think I have COVID and I can't get out of the house. And I find an old one. I'm like, I'm going to use this anyhow. I shouldn't, but I'm going to use it. I know it's not a great example, but
if you think that you've come up with a loophole that they have not come up with a ridiculous rule around, you're wrong.
I don't think that I've come up with something that no one has fathomed before. I think that come June 2024, there are going to be devices that are non-compliant and shouldn't be used that will be used.
Yep.
I think, Joe, you're riding that line of almost negligence or this becomes a legal action that a physician does, not along like a regulatory thing anymore. Like this is now has legal implications for the hospital. They have to have their own protocols for how they store inventory. They know things are expiring. You know, you can't in the US, I know you can't even get things in the hospital without them having done their own internal check and qualification of the supply chain. So a doctor may have something that is MDD certified and it might be many years out, but it's not that they are allowed to do it. It is that they are probably going to use it illegally in the case of best patient use.
It's not in a lot of illegal. Countries. It's still up to the physician to use it, and the malpractice. The malpractice things are not that bad in Europe as they are in the United States. Yeah. So a lot of physicians just take a chance.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like that answer. You tell the people, Michelle,
Well,
you're closest to them.
To some extent, Joe, it's a little bit of some of the debates that are going on in the U.S. right now about abortion. You know, the hospitals are getting involved, and the legal departments of the hospitals are getting involved. It's just, it's been a mess. So, as Luke was saying, the law is an ass. Somebody else said that before him, but it's worth saying again.
I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I saw that Lindsey Graham introduced legislation to nationalize the ban of abortion across the country, not just for the states that made their own choice.
And did you see what the other Republicans said to him, including Mitch McConnell?
No, I don't know what they
Shut
said.
up. Can't do that.
Please stop talking, I think was the sort of subtle message.
Let's see, we covered all the speakers.
Yeah, but we also had that nice creative time as well.
Oh yes,
we
of course,
just had
with
a
Andrew.
problem to solve, and that was the fun part as well.
Andrew Cohen. When I spoke with Andrew, he has developed some pediatric devices, some for a senior set, and when we spoke, he was going to talk about how to expedite adoption of legacy systems, like how to integrate these new technologies into the way things are done. And when it came time for him to speak, he had a different idea. I said, okay, well, go with it. And he came to the stage with a roll of toilet paper. And he challenged us to come up with, only using a roll of toilet paper, how to create a device that would help the elderly pull up their socks. And he broke us out into groups. And actually, so this is, I found this to be an especially profitable session because one guy bet me £1 that Andrew was going to say, "You idiots, it can't be done. I was just testing you." And I was like, there's just no way. He's like, "That's what I think." I said, "Are you willing to bet?" And so that was an easy quid I made. I'm probably going to get some dairy milk with it later. Do you, Eddie, remember the answer of how to use toilet paper to pull up your socks?
Well, it did seem to me that it involves adding a whole bunch of things around the toilet paper that made it not so much the toilet paper roll anymore, but sort of a very clever design. And there was a guy, who was the guy? Warner.
He rang his mother.
His mother came up with such an idea. He called his 83-year-old mother for the answer to the question, how do you use toilet paper to pull up your socks? And then he reported back to the class. I was still, at that point, Philip had just walked in and I thought we had to go upstairs for the last presentation. No, we didn't. So I told everyone to get out of the room and go upstairs, and they did. And I said, okay, now please go back downstairs.
But I must say that on the invention bit, clearly Stephen Carter's talk was effective, because a number of people spent a good part of their time discussing IP rights if they came up with this killer app. Who's going to own it at the table? It was refreshing.
That's funny.
And you forget about Nick Scare. His
Oh, yes, of
invention
course.
on using silk for implants.
Yes, for the CEO of Orthox, a 15-year-old company, has created a device that is only made of silk. And it's regrettable that Alyssa isn't on today's call, because her concept with screws that absorb is similar. I don't remember does anyone remember what material she uses? He had a clinical trial in 2015.
It failed
at 6 months. And so he talked about managing expectations and dealing with investors and doing the workaround, being stuck by COVID and what that did to the thing. And he reminded us all why few of us choose to be CEOs of medical device companies.
I had a talk
Right,
with
Eddie?
him afterwards, and I said, isn't it easier just to drill a hole through the bone and get a lead through it? On the other end, you have a stop and tie a knot in it, and then you also have a strain relief. And he said, yeah, that was his first idea as well, but the surgeons don't want to be at both sides of the knee. They only want to make one opening and get the device in, and that's it.
I'm going to see if I can get Alyssa on. She's usually good about, oh, she just wrote. Apologies for having to miss again today. I have a meeting at 10. Okay, well, that answers that.
But he was lucky that he had 6 million in funding just before his clinical trial failed.
And clearly very supportive shareholders, because I don't know a lot of investors who would keep the same CEO around for 15 years through all of that. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he were the majority shareholder. He's got a lot of personal sweat equity in that company. So.
If I win the lottery, I would buy shares in this company.
Really?
Yeah. It's so promising.
Wouldn't you do a lot better if you just took that money and gave it all to Sue Carr?
Well, maybe split it into half to Sue and half to Nick Carr.
Eddie wouldn't mind a few bucks. How much are you raising, Eddie?
Well, we were up to 1.8 million. And then a couple of weeks ago, this investor group who basically were doing diligence pulled out for a number of silly reasons.
Such as?
They did this, they had this technical report written, which we refuted and responded to early on. And if they were still going to stick to their guns on that stuff, they should have told us 2 months ago and we would have moved on with our lives, and that's fine. But it's things like they're worried about, so their expert said that they need to really be worried about encrustation and calcification of the device. And I pointed out to them why that isn't the case with this device, because unlike a Foley catheter, which has a little lip where fluid is constantly going over the edge, a bit like that overflow in your loo, I said, ours does a complete fill and void. So there's actually nowhere for encrustations to build up on the device. I told them that months ago.
No.
And if they wanted to disagree with me, they can disagree with me. But faffing about, and anyway,
So
the way I put it to them is, look, we've already done half of our deal. We've got we got basically half a tank of gas, right? So we can move forward. We're going to get there. We just need to stop off at another gas station along the way.
Have you identified the gas station? Is there one on your map?
There are a couple. We just on Tuesday submitted for a £500,000 government. It's called a loan. It's kind of got a grant element to it. It's non-dilutive. It's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than equity. So that would pretty much fill the hole right there. We'll know about that in a couple of months.
Mark, you'll be our featured guest next week, and you're going to be talking about a device. I suspect that you are also in the market for capital for Luke when he wins the lottery.
Yes, we're looking for about $500,000 to do all the medical device compliance.
All about compliance.
Yeah.
So you have a prototype already.
We have a prototype. It's working. We've tested it on patients. But
let me understand, when you say tested on patients, we ran a clinical trial.
It's done in a university, so I don't know if that's actually an interesting question. Is it quote unquote a clinical trial? It's definitely a study done by a university. It's been published.
Michelle, does that count?
I'm sorry, I was talking to Alan behind the scenes. What was that?
Mark has run, I asked him if he's run a clinical trial on the device he'll talk about next week. And he says he's developed this with university that's used the device on some patients and published a paper. And I'm parsing and thinking that doesn't mean you run a clinical trial.
That's correct. And it's usually, and David can chime in here too, but you definitely want to run protocols, whether you're doing it at a university or otherwise, by the FDA in advance. to get their input, especially if you plan on that data being usable for submission purposes in the future. Because the FDA will look at a protocol in a pre-submission, but they won't look at data or anything that you've already done. So there's no way, once you've already run the trial, to get direct feedback from FDA. It's just, the clinical consultants, speculation about FDA's opinion at that point.
Yeah, the FDA I'm a little less worried about because the path is a 510K, so we probably don't need it. It's more the MDR side.
Yeah, and they don't look at protocols anyways. So, and MDR is just tricky right now, period, when it comes to clinical, but some's better than none, which is the predicament most companies are in with MDR.
We'll talk about, and Mark, you're welcome to invite, academicians, folks from university, people on your team, so that you get the most out of next week.
Good, I'll do that. That'd be great.
As I recall, the week after you, we've yet to select a speaker. Is that right, folks? Do you know? Let's look. So I know that there's a week or two in October that we still need no, Larry Stevens is with us on the 30th. Proving safety and effectiveness may not get you FDA approval. And Gio Lausella, well, Dwayne's not here to help me pronounce his name properly, is going to talk about raising capital toward the end of the month of October. So I do have 2 openings. If someone has a topic they'd like to hear, a recommended speaker would like to take the microphone themselves.
When the QMSR came out, we really didn't have any kind of conversation amongst ourselves about it. I don't know, I don't really want to put together a presentation per se, but maybe a group conversation about it could be interesting, because Ty and I had the opportunity to actually talk to one of the FDA ladies that was involved with drafting it at RAPS, and we've got some interesting perspectives, let's say. Actually,
I would say that what you missed at RAPS would be a great talk for the 7th.
Yeah.
And you can do it, and David, and for goodness sake, just like this, don't prepare a slide, just open conversation, and naturally things will come out of it. So can I enlist David and Michelle to take the lead on what you missed at RAPS? Mr. Rutledge? David?
It's fine with me. David's okay. We're going to go.
What day were you talking about? I need to check my calendar, Joe.
On the 7th or on my birthday, the 14th?
Okay, let me look at my calendar real quickly here.
Okay, let me know. And then we still have an open spot for something. So folks, let me know. Jorg. Now Jorg wants to be promoted to panelist. I don't know where he's been, probably driving into the office. Dr. Lin, this is uncharacteristic for you not to show yourself on screen. I don't know what's going on over there. Yeah. We've seen you driving. We've seen Luke go for a walk. We've seen Jonathan Saul walk around town.
Yeah.
No stranger to that. Well, you're here. Do you have anything you wanted to contribute, or just say hi?
No, I just wanted to say hi. And
hi, Jorg. Everybody.
I think there was something at the time
hi,
I asked
Jorg.
at the time I asked to be promoted. I think there was something, but I've lost it by now. So, it's okay.
Yeah.
It'll come back.
That's all I have today, folks.
I'm sorry I missed the London event. That would have been fun.
Everybody, April 11th to the 13th is the date for the next one in San Diego.
And I will be there for that.
We are.
I gotta go, but I'm happy to do something with David.
Okay, you're up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm available on the 7th, not the 14th. I've got all day commitment on the 14th. So.
Okay.
And I'm not available on the 7th.
Brilliant.
Well, we'll work it out between us.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm changing hotels for the first time in years. We're going to be at the Wyndham Bayside. So folks who live near there, have you been? I know that it was good enough for Comic-Con this year, so it's good enough for us.
It's nice.
Chris, you know it?
It's nice.
Luke, I'll figure that out later. Bye.
Okay. Chris, what you've never presented. Do you have something you would share with the group?
I could. What
I
was the
have
time
your
slot you-
I have your 10x presentation in the can. I'm still backed up processing, but now that London's finished, I'm going to be able to get through these videos. So don't do that. But if you have another topic to educate us, Kevin, by the way, where are you job-wise? I know back in May you were looking at some opportunities.
Still, I'm evaluating things that come to me. I'm not super active, really going outbound yet, because I'm still trying to get my other things sold. So I've looked at a couple of things. I'm actually waiting to hear back on something right now.
I'm sure someone on this call is not familiar with what you're doing and trying to sell. Here's your platform. What do you need?
On that, we've been kind of kept on a rope by a prospective buyer now for about 4 months. So I need my buyer to write me a check. We've actually been hung up in getting a final manufacturing trial run. We were having supply chain problems, and then since we're dependent on CMOs to run our PPE materials, particularly melt blowns, we've kind of gotten hung up on scheduling. But we're actually hoping to get that final test run in about 3 weeks. We finally have things put together, I hope.
It sounds that our help is a long shot. We're limited in what we can do to assist you.
If you got somebody that does, medical grade melt blowns,
I'd have to Google what that is first, but I might.
It's what all your PPE is made out of: masks, gowns, all that stuff. It's all melt blown polymer.
Okay.
So, which is, no, I was going to say that's what, it's very large scale, expensive production lines. Otherwise, I really wish we would have raised more money in the beginning to get a prototype line done ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
My partner actually used to run the Kimberly-Clark development center down in Georgia for their melt
For
blowns.
goodness sake, come off mute. Alan Ehrlich, come off mute and tell them what you just wrote.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. I thought you had us on mute. Sorry.
No, you put yourself on mute.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So Kevin, I used to work at KC, and I don't know if you know some of the same people, but I don't know if they're still working.
Probably. So, like I said, my partner's actually ex Kimberly-Clark. We ran some trials down at Hills down in Florida, which has some of the ex Kimberly-Clark people. And our potential buyer is actually a startup who's an ex KC outsourcing person. So,
what's your partner's name? Maybe Alan knows him.
Tom Steimer.
Tom.
He left Kimberly probably about 15 years ago, so it's been a while.
That Tom Steimer?
Yeah.
Who's your partner?
That I can't say. I can't disclose.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like you probably know, you already connected with some of the same people who know because all their gowns and PPE were made of the SMS material.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so we're stuck with here domestically it's KC, and then obviously the competitors at Molnike, and then we've got somebody else that's potentially out of Asia, but we're a little bit reluctant to do that, mainly because they don't want to pay much up front, but more importantly, we're a bit afraid of letting our IP go over to China.
There's a couple other guys that I know left. A guy named Chad Ellis who'd worked at KC with me. They started like their own company. I know they were doing surgical kits with PPE, and then another company, they were doing stuff with Premier. They had the contract with Premier. I haven't reached out to them in a while, but I think they're doing stuff. So I don't know if they're a competitor or what, but happy to chat.
I think I made a note here. I may come back to you on that if we have issues with this current group. That's expressing interest. Because if that falls through, and they fell through for us last year because their funding didn't come through, but they've actually they've gotten a bunch of federal money for domestic PPE manufacturing and a private equity backer to put up a big plant. But if they fall through again, we're kind of back to what do we want to do? Do we try to find a buyer real quick, or do we go back into fundraising mode and then try to get this going on our own? I'm still leaning towards trying to find another buyer at this point. But we'll see. So, you know, I made a note here. As I said, I may come back to you to maybe put me in touch with you know, Chad Ellis or Alan.
Okay. You're
Okay,
welcome.
boys, get a room. We're gonna call this one. I gotta go find myself a date for a play in 2.5 hours.
So Joe, did you see the Queen when you
Sorry?
were? Did you get to go see any of the funeral stuff while you were there or no?
No, the queue is a few days long, so I pay my respects mentally to the Queen and will not be standing in line to pass a wooden box where her body supposedly lays. You know, that's all fake, right?
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy. She's not actually dead. This is by Big Monarch.
Is that why they're using a lead coffin so nobody can scan it and see that it's empty?
Mm-hmm. That's true. Okay, cheerio, you good folks. Stay calm and carry on.
Hey,
Stiff upper lip, and I'll see you next
Joe,
week.
when are you gonna be getting videos up from this week?
I'm just going to say respectfully, I don't know.
Okay.
But I know that I have a lot of processing to do. But I have also figured out a way to do it faster than I have in the past, given the less than relative incompetence of the team that replaced the team that used to be competent. Bye all. See you next week.
All right, bye, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay.